I'm Sal Abenanti, and I'm here on Kickstarter to ask for your support to produce my 115-page color graphic novel, The Hostage. Hostage is set in the streets of Rio de Janeiro, based on the plight of the street children that live in the favelas. In the world of the graphic novel, being murdered daily, and the hostage is the evil spirit that is raised to avenge their death. Origins go all the way back to the indigenous tribes of the Amazon as the spirits that protect children, especially murdered children. The level of death that these kids have to endure every day. They have nowhere to sleep. They have no place to eat. They have to survive off of begging. There were nobody in capes that were coming to save these kids.
Check out The Hostage, a combination of supernatural action and realism set in the streets of Brazil. Now, a Kickstarter campaign. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I am happy to welcome Lawrence Luckinbill to Word Balloon on this President's Day. I know it's been a weird time right now regarding presidential politics, certainly coming off this past weekend. But this is a positive President's Day thing, and Lawrence is a great representative because as an actor, he has done several historical one-man shows. Plays about Lyndon Baines Johnson, two non-presidents, Clarence Darrow and Ernest Hemmingway, but then also one about Teddy Roosevelt. And Dead Reckoning, an East Coast publisher, has taken the play and turned it into a graphic novel. And we talk about that. We talk about Teddy Roosevelt, how important he was. We talk about Luckinbill's life as an actor, growing up in the South, and the lessons he learned of negative behavior and taught him to be the man that he is today, and the example for his children. He is married to Lucy Arnaz, the daughter of Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. We talk about their relationship and the acting they've done together. Lucy had a great musical called They're Playing Our Song, and Lawrence did the play with her on tour across the country. He's best known on Broadway for being in the original cast of Boys in the Band, a very controversial at the time play about the gay lifestyle, and pretty shocking stuff for the late 60s and early 70s when it was turned into a William Friedkin film. And Lawrence talks about that experience as well. He is in Cocktail, the Tom Cruise Bryant Brown movie that featured Elizabeth Shue. He plays Elizabeth Shue's father and has a couple big scenes in Cocktail. He's done a ton of TV and a ton of films. He's probably best known on camera for his film role of Sybok, Spock's brother in Star Trek V. And we talk a lot about that as well. Really great conversation with Lawrence Luckinbill, exploring the life of Teddy Roosevelt in a graphic novel and his career. And it's a pleasure to get to know him on this episode of Word Balloon. Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners and their patronage through Patreon. Patreon.com/wordballoon. I hope you'll consider subscribing to Word Balloon via Patreon. I'm doing my best to present some incredible conversations with creators of pop culture, whether it's from comics or television or film. I do my best to give you the best coverage and in-depth interviews here at Word Balloon every month. Thank you for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners, via patreon.com/wordballoon. Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners and their patronage through Patreon. Patreon.com/wordballoon. I hope you'll consider subscribing to Word Balloon via Patreon. I'm doing my best to present some incredible conversations with creators of pop culture, whether it's from comics or television or film. I do my best to give you the best coverage and in-depth interviews here at Word Balloon every month. Thank you for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners, via patreon.com/wordballoon. Let's get into my conversation with Mr. Luckinbill. I had a couple technical issues, so I had to record this call on my iPhone, and so my voice is slightly muffled, but you'll understand every word that I'm saying. And Mr. Luckinbill, you can he sounds clear as a bell. This was recorded the day after the inauguration, so I'm glad to say that for President's Day we had a positive view of the office and the future of the presidency while we were talking, and I believe that both of us still have that feeling despite what's been going on lately. Lawrence Luckinbill on today's Word Balloon.
So I was just looking over my original Teddy play that I that I did, and when I opened it off Broadway in New York in 2002, and I at that point I was actually coming out in front of the audience and putting on the mustache and putting on all the wig and all the stuff and talking to people at the same time. And I that was the very first run of it. And I've since then, as I said, I write these things in about 3 weeks after a lot of research, and then I revise them for 30 years. You know? and guess what? The revisions are all cutting and streamlining and getting to the meat of it and getting to the heart of things all the time. As an actor, I've always been, give me a prop, give me something to do with my hands, or give me a limp. I'll have a limp. Or something to distinguish me. A stutter. I'll stutter.
So what was it for Roosevelt? Yeah.
Well, Roosevelt remade himself as a young child, and that was a huge part of his life, and it made him into what he was at the very end as well, and what he was challenging about himself at the very end. And we can get into that. I'll tell you whatever I think about it. But I've done 4 of these: Lyndon Johnson, Clarence Darrow, Theodore Roosevelt, and Ernest Hemmingway. And I was sort of detoured from my Broadway and Hollywood stuff because at a certain point in my life, in 1987, David Susskind called me out of the blue. He was sort of my Dutch uncle. He used to call me up and offer me pieces of television crap. And I don't know if you know who he was, but he was a great producer.
Sir. Yes, sir. Great producer, great talk show host. I'm very aware of this.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
That's exactly right. And his talk, that's how I met him on his talk show. We were doing Boys in the Band. And
sure.
He invited us all to come on and talk. And most of the guys didn't really want to because they knew what was coming, in the questioning. But being one of the only 2 straight people in the audience, I had no fear of it because I was kind of dumb about it, really, about the closet and what it all entailed. It's like this sort of hidden racism that we all really have to own up to. You have to own up to hidden paranoia about others. And
yes, sir.
So anyway, when David got into talking about what's it like to come out and play a gay person, the other guys clammed up, and I actually just spoke up about it, and I really spoke on their behalf because I was beginning to learn what life was all about then. And so David and I got along, and out of the blue, he called me in 1987. He said, there's a script on your desk. I just messengered it to you. And I said, no, there's not. He said, well, it will be. I want you to read it and get back to me in about 20 minutes because I've got something to say to you. And okay, I hung up, and the script did come, and it was put on my desk, and it was called Lyndon, and it was 69 pages long, single-spaced. And the phone rang, and I had read about 2 paragraphs and realized that it was paralyzingly perilous and scary. to think about a one-man show. I'd never in my life thought about that. And he called me up and he said, okay, it was December. It was late November. He said, we're going to be in Toronto shooting this on the day before Christmas, and we'll be there right through the holidays. So get ready. And I said, are you crazy? He said, no, what are you talking about? I said, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. I hated this motherfucker. He's a Southern politician. He's 6'5". I'm not. He was a sly dog. I'm not. What do you want me for? He said, never mind. I said, well, who canceled? He said, it's none of your fucking business. And after I did my hate routine, he said, there was a long pause, and he said, simply this, Larry, that will change. And eventually I took the part because my wife also said she read a piece of the script and she just dumped it right back on my desk and said, well, if you don't do this, I guess you don't want to be an actor anymore.
Wow.
So I did it, and but not until I had told David that I was coming up to his office to prove to him that I was not the right guy for this. It was all fear talking, but I didn't even know that. I just thought, I can't do this. So I walked up to his office on Madison Avenue, and I walked in, and his secretary, Jean Kennedy, who was a dear person, she said, oh, we're so glad you're doing this. David would be so happy. And I said, I see what's going on, Jean, but I'm not doing it. So I went into his office and sat knee to knee to him in a chair with the script on my lap, and I started reading to him. And a strange thing happened. As I read, I began to get visions of my daddy, my father, who ran a store up in Harrison, Arkansas, in the Ozarks. It was an all-purpose sort of general automotive store and that kind of stuff. But they had furniture. They had everything for the farmers. And I remember how he talked to those guys and how they talked to him. And the sound of that memory was coming out of my mouth. And so over time, and it was about 10 minutes, tears started coming to my eyes, and they were just rolling down my face. And I stopped and I said, you see what I mean? And he said, yeah, you're perfect.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it was a good story, and I mean, it is a good story, but it's absolutely true. And I didn't want to do the makeup either, because that's how I am. And so again, I got talked into it, and I was certainly glad I did. I doubt if you've seen the thing, but it's on my website.
Oh wow! That's great. Is there like a YouTube video of it or some video?
Yeah, there's also YouTube, and there's two versions. One is the one I filmed myself without my production in Texas at the Paramount Theater. This is after I had done it. I had done it in New York for 12 weeks, and I could have gone on forever, but I had obligations. I was living in L.A. at the time, and I had to get back to the family. But then we filmed it in a Texas tour, and I stayed a couple of weeks at the Paramount Theater playing it. And then I played it at the LBJ Library for Lady Bird.
Amazing.
and I got to meet all those people, the cabinet members and everybody. And you can imagine how terrified I was, because I'm putting on the suit and makeup, so I look like the guy, but they knew the guy,
Yeah, of course.
But I must say, everybody was extremely kind about it. And so, as a result, I added Clarence Darrow, and then a couple of years later, I added Teddy, and then in 2005, I added Hemmingway. And I did these plays around the circuit everywhere. I'm trying to remember if I worked in Chicago or not. I don't think I did. But I worked all around there in the Rust Belt places.
Okay. Yeah.
And a lot of repertory, the repertory theaters and
Sure.
repurposed theaters that had been movie theaters, et cetera, et cetera. And I've had 35 years of going out and doing these men. And I was just looking at this thing I wrote for the opening, for the very first production. And I said here, you mind if I read your stuff? Read your couple lines?
No, please. Yeah, please.
Right. This is me talking now. I'm putting on the makeup. They all faced the most difficult issues of our time: war, exploitation, crime, poverty, war, racism, war, inequality, war, ignorance, bigotry, disease, war, the pain of being human, war. Did I say war? These men wanted to know what our responsibility is to each other, to our country, to the world. They wanted to know what it means to be an American. These men defined the 20th century with their ideals of humanism and social justice and what they did about them. Now they're all gone. They all died young, much younger than I am now. But what matters is the words they spoke, what they said that changed the world and lighted the way forward for our country and for us. Words matter. My time with these men has made me a better citizen, a better American. And though I know I will never be a great American, tonight at least I can act like one. And then I started to play. And
wow.
So that's kind of the genesis of the Teddy thing. After I did Lyndon at the library, Harry Middleton, who was one of my mentors in life, without which you cannot go forward, as you may know, he would call me up and say, "Do you have a play about blah blah?" And he called me up the same way and said, Teddy Roosevelt, because we have now some of his papers and stuff like that. And I said, well, there are a couple plays out there. One was done by Jimmy Whitmore, who was a very good actor, and he had to be because the play was shit. It wasn't any good. It was just, it was just a recounting, and then I did, and then I went, and then I did this.
Okay.
That's not what my play is.
No, sir.
My play is, if you've seen the book, I don't know if you have, but...
Oh, of course, I read the book. It was fantastic. Yes, please.
Oh, good. So it's about one thing, his son dying.
Yes,
and
Quentin.
And that event drives him on the podium, drives him to a review of his own life and his own failings, and how it happened that you may not know this, but Quentin was the youngest, of course, and he was the favorite of his mother, and he was a dear child. He was a very adventuresome kid, and he volunteered to fly, and he had bad eyes just like Teddy, but they let him in because he was a Roosevelt, and so he was made to fly at the very back of the squadron in those bi-wing sorties over the French-German border, because he was so impulsive. And he was, if you know Teddy's story, he charged up San Juan Hill, which was really a different hill, but they called it San Juan Hill. He charged up that on a horse in the clear, and from the heights, the Spanish were using German Mauser rifles that were smokeless, and they were firing straight down at the men walking up that hill. And Teddy, like a maniac, rode his fucking horse up the hill and then got off and killed a guy. And they took the hill, and so all of his life, that was a memory that he cherished. And at the same time, when he heard that Quentin, they were flying on this mission, and the guy, this is complicated. A guy wrote a book about it who lived in Cross River, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
And he was an old man, and he had written because he had been in the squadron with Teddy Roosevelt. And so I read his book, and the description was he was behind me, and we kept him there for a purpose, so that we could he would have to obey the commands from the front. And we looked up and we saw some flashes of red up there, so we knew it was the Germans. And I turned around, and the order came, the wave came to attack, and we started up. But I turned around, and Quentin was gone. And then we saw his plane attacking the entire German squadron by himself.
Wow.
And he lasted 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And when he came down, you know, those planes didn't crash the way they do today. They were very light, and they circled and they circled, and they kind of rode the air currents a little bit on the way down. So there was a possibility that he made it down alive, but he didn't. And so anyway, that's the beginning of the play, and that's Teddy trying to reconcile his lifetime belief in being a warrior, and to reconcile that with his son dying because of it.
Yeah.
So that's basically what my story is, my storyline.
Yeah, the irony that as accomplished as Roosevelt was, and it seems even the sons that lived beyond Quentin, I saw the Ken Burns Roosevelt documentary, and know that they met untimely deaths as well in war. And
yes.
I mean, my God, the tragedy of Kermit and Theodore
Kermit
Jr.
is a sad tale. Yeah.
Yeah, and truly, you feel for these men that were the sons of great men, and probably felt the need to live up to their fathers. And in fact, you even write that Teddy Roosevelt wanted to, as much as he loved his father, saw his father's flaws, the inability to serve during the Civil War, and that, he wanted to do better than his father. And I'm sure he tried to instill that in his sons. And maybe the sad irony that, they in trying to be like their father, met such tragic ends.
Yes, and the father actually paid a man to take his place.
Right.
In the Civil War.
Yes.
And he was completely ashamed of that all of his life. And Teddy took on that shame and he also took on, a sense of a lot of us feel about our fathers that they're not what we want. Some people don't. Some people are maybe more fortunate. Their fathers are exactly what they want. But a lot of us grow up feeling. My father was an alcoholic, so I loved him, but I couldn't be like him. And and I've spent a lot of my life trying to be as far away from him as I could.
Sure.
But these are the kinds of stories that interest me. These four men I call the group Great Americans, because you couldn't get past their ideas without dealing with them, and their ideas were basically humanist and basically actual heroism as opposed to superhero type stuff.
I understand. Yeah.
I mean, actual heroism, if you know, you have married, you got children, what?
No, I'm a single man, but I go on, please.
Yeah. So you understand that obligations to a partner or to another person, or even to your family of origin, those obligations require the ability to forgive. They require the ability to help, to be of assistance, and all of those things. And those are the heroics of our day, I think.
Agreed, sir. Absolutely. What made you want to convert the play into a graphic novel?
Well, it was quite an interesting shock, to tell you the truth, when I got the call from Dead Reckoning to do it. My agent and I had tried to sell a package of all my four plays, and I got 67 absolutely gorgeous rejections. The first paragraph always went, "Wow, what great writing! Wonderful! This is absorbing, fascinating, interesting, inspiring." And the second paragraph said, "However,"
yeah, of course,
or but, or nevertheless, But that's par for the course. It was a hard package to sell, and I understand, a little bit more about the publishing industry and how amazing it is. And I was just reading something in the paper this morning that shocked the hell out of me. Two young men, young man, young woman, have made $3 million from Snapchat because they upload their lives and all the little weird stuff they do, sometimes 120, 30 times a day. In other words, they live on their Snap accounts. And as you know, Snap lasts only a few seconds,
right?
And disappears. But they are influencers of the highest, and they're millionaires. After one of them has 8 million followers. Amazing.
Sure.
And they're just kids, 19 and 21, and so you go, is this real? I mean, I fear for the young lady that gave the brilliant the young poet.
Oh yes, at the inauguration.
Gave the speech, read her poem, because now all of the agents on Earth are rushing her to make her into a star and then drain her of her substance.
Wow, you're right. Yeah, probably, sir.
Yeah. It's the night of the living dead.
Well, it's Andy Warhol. It's Andy Warhol's prophecy that we'll all be famous for 15 minutes, I suppose.
Yes. Our country can't go on like this. But tell me about Smash Comics.
Smash Comics. I don't know that. I'm Word Balloon is my podcast.
Oh, yeah.
My podcast, and yeah, I've been doing it for 15 years, and
right.
I'm a radio guy. I worked at CBS Radio for many years here in Chicago.
Yeah,
and saw the opportunities of podcasting to do the kind of radio interview show I always wanted to do, and do it on my own and do it on the podcasting platform instead of broadcasting, and
right.
It's been successful. I've been doing well. I've had the opportunity to talk to people from film and stage like yourself, and television, and in addition to comic creators as well. And I understand too, as you were telling me in our email correspondence, you're a comic book fan. And then is that what intrigued you when Dead Reckoning came to you about adapting Teddy into a graphic novel?
Well, I was thrilled to see what was going to be done with it, and they hired this young artist, Eryck Tate, who works in advertising. That's how he makes his living.
Okay.
There's a lot of artwork that goes into that, making presentations and so on, particularly for television, as you know.
Sure.
So the translation between my words on the page and his pictures, I think is pretty good. Yeah. I mean, do you think so? Do you feel that?
Truly, absolutely, sir. I mean, it really does sit well next to a lot of the alternative comics. I mean, I speak to both people like, and I don't know if you know these names, Harvey Pekar, when he was still around, but people that write true life comics, as well as people who do superhero comics as well.
Right.
And I think this fits in quite nicely with the people that do the real life comics. And no, his art is fantastic, and I think it was a very effective translation of your words into a very successful graphic novel. I hope the awareness, and then that's why I'm happy to do this interview and let my audience know that this is absolutely a graphic novel they should pick up.
I'm very glad to hear all of this, because I don't have much of a reference point for these things.
Sure.
As I think I wrote to you, my last reference for something called real life comics would be classic comics.
Of course. Yes.
Back in the day.
Yes, sir.
They took novels and mythological stories, and they made very good action comics out of them. There was a time when I may have been the biggest trader on my block. My front stoop store, my trading store, and it was all barter.
Good.
I'll give you 5 Supermans for one pristine Captain Marvel. It's kind of a superhero slave market.
Who are your favorite characters? I'm sure my audience would love to hear who you used to love to read as far as the comics.
Say that again?
Who were your favorite comic book characters? You mentioned Superman and Captain Marvel. Obviously, they were among them. Were there others that you really enjoyed reading?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I was Captain Marvel. I don't know if you knew that. Well, sure. I should say I was Billy Batson.
In your mind, in your imagination, obviously, as you read them?
Yes. I mean, I really believed if I said Shazam, I would be Captain Marvel.
No, I understand. Absolutely. That's the dream. That's what got us all hooked into reading these things, was imagining ourselves as these heroes. I get it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
I've written an enormous memoir of my life, which I'm temporarily calling Famous Enough. But I don't know what I'll call it. I used to tell a joke to my family, which was a really rude joke about a sailor looking up a girl's dress, and I mean a woman on the bus, and she crosses her legs and says, "How's it look now?" And he just does a little thing with his mouth. And my wife suggested, "Why don't you call it, how's it look now?"
No, seriously, it's truly, I first became aware of you in Star Trek V.
Oh.
But then I'm a big television and film buff and saw things you had done prior to that, like Boys in the Band. And, certainly as I told you in our email, I just saw again the rerun of you on Mary Tyler Moore. And that's a great episode. And your Columbo as well.
Yes.
So I've become more aware of your work. Over the years, I became more aware of your work. And what a terrific career in all the various roles you've been able to play, and very different roles. So that's terrific.
Yeah. The interesting thing was that after Boys in the Band, Boys in the Band came 11 years into my New York work, and a lot of that time I would do a play at night, and then go into a restaurant and work as a host. And I happened to work for a great restaurant, steakhouse in New York, and the owner of it was very kind. He let me wander in and out pretty much at will. If I had got a job, he said, "Oh, take off, boy. That's good. You're a good boy." And then the play would fail, and I'd come begging back. He'd say, "I go, yeah, we tell Adolfo, go get the fuck out of here. What's this boy taking over?" Because he was a force of nature, that guy. But anyway, Boys in the Band was. I've written a lot about it because it was 3 years out of my life, and Mark Crowley, the writer, was a kid I met at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. When I was a graduate student, and he was a young student, and we were both from the South, and we both understood that Southern thing. There's a Southern thing, what you understand mainly is all this subsumed racism, and but anyway, we got along. But I knew that he was. I just have to. I don't know you, but there was a group called the Odd Boys,
Okay.
And they were different. They were queers and faggots and all those words, which even then offended me. I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because I grew up as a good Catholic boy, and people calling people things like that were not good,
Yes.
Anyway, this kid became a friend, and then I went to New York, and he went to Hollywood, and 10 years later, after I had been working in New York and actually gotten a couple of awards, Critics Circle and stuff like that, for off Broadway, and I had not done a film, and I had done a bunch of the very early. I'd done some live TV, and then I got a job on a soap called The Secret Storm, and that was the first money I ever made.
Wow!
And I was able to rent an apartment instead of living out of my cardboard boxes and borrowing people's couches for 10 years. And after 10 years, Mark got in touch with me and he said, I have this play. I would like to show it to you. And we met at a bar downtown in the village, and he was holding this play to his breast like it was a baby. And he said, I've tried to get people to read this, and people don't want to read it. Actors don't want to read it. I'm getting turned down. But it's he told me enough about what was going on with him. He was dead broke. He had no more money. He was in debt, and he had been house sitting for a friend of Natalie Wood's, and the people went away to Europe or something on a long trip, and he ate all the food in the refrigerator and drank all the booze, and then he sat down desperate and wrote this play, and he wrote it very quickly, and he brought it to New York, and it was a story of his life, and people did not want to know. And I read it, and I thought it was funny, and I thought it was really sad, and it was shocking, and it was brave, and all that shit. So I said, I will do it, Mart. And he wiped a tear away because he was a tough kid. And he said, oh, great, thank you. And so it got done, and in a workshop, Eddie Albee, if you know who he is, Edward Albee.
Oh, of course. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Great playwright.
Yeah, he had a place called the Playwrights Unit, and what you did there was never reviewed. No reviewers came. It was not a secret place, but it was a place literally for playwrights to try out work. And so we a bunch of us committed to a 1 week workshop of the thing, and we did it, and it was not reviewed, and so if it had failed, Mart would have been his life would have been over, because he was completely unknown, and and my agent, who happened to represent the play, said, "Do not do this. It's going to wreck your career." And I'm like, "What career?" You know, it's like I was doing okay, but I wasn't earning a living, and the only time I'd earned a living at that point in '67 was from the soap, and so that but my love affair with the stage is much stronger than my love affair with cameras and movies. So I stayed in New York always, and anyway, this is a long story about how I got to play that part, and it suddenly changed my life. And I got 2 movies out of it, one was they were both with Otto Preminger, and
wow.
One was called Such Good Friends with Diane Cannon, and the next one was to be I forget the name of it. It was an adventure novel written by Helen McInnes, who wrote about spies and stuff like that, and it was set in the Alps, and I was really looking forward to that, and so I did Such Good Friends, where I was like a bad husband to Diane Cannon, and so then I'm wandering here. Get me back on track.
I was gonna.
We want to talk about Teddy.
No, and I honestly, I really appreciate hearing about Boys in the Band. And before we leave Boys in the Band, I wanted to ask, and God, even mentioning Otto Preminger, and really, I do know, sir, that a lot of your work was on stage, as you say, rather than in front of the camera. But I am interested in some of the filmmakers you worked with, like William Friedkin, who obviously did the Boys in the Band film, and he's a Chicago guy, and I've certainly appreciated a lot of his films over the years. Comparing doing the stage version and the original stage version, and then doing the film, what was it like? The experience of doing the play versus the movie?
Well, the play, naturally, once the curtain goes up, nobody yells cut.
Yeah.
Which means that the responsibility is the actors. And that's part of what makes acting on stage so very exciting. And I don't care what movie you're doing. I mean, I was doing a movie with Tom Cruise called Cocktail.
Yes, sir.
Where I played the girl's father. And,
yes, Elizabeth Shue's father, indeed.
Yeah, that was for Disney. And there were, I don't know, the girl's father had about 5 good scenes, and I thought, this is worth it. And naturally, when the movie came out, he had 1 scene. Yeah. But it's okay, because Tom is a very serious actor, and he jumps rope between takes, and so he's very very serious about things. But what am I talking about that for?
Well, that's all right, but it's all right.
We're talking about movies versus theater.
Indeed.
Yeah. So I got a lot of my chops from working as hard as I could possibly work to become a good stage actor. And after Boys in the Band, I was asked to do a couple more gay parts. I did one for the Shadow Box, which won a Pulitzer Prize for the author, and was in 1978 in New York. And then later on, Paul Newman made a movie out of it. But that was a gay man as well. And then I did something else. I forget what. Burt Reynolds wanted me to do a gay politician for his show Hawk, I think it was called.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and he directed it and all that. But that's all after that, I just said I can't do this anymore. Not because I was getting identified, but because I was much more interested in history, in American history. And once I started off on this detour to do these one-man shows, I really kind of I didn't lose interest in doing movies and stuff, but I got a lot more cool about it. It wasn't my main goal in life, but if you want to hear about Star Trek, I can tell you about that.
I absolutely, and I noticed that Shatner just kind of thought of you when he saw your Lyndon Johnson one-man show.
That's correct. That's absolutely true. He saw Lyndon. He was in some as he said, I was in some hole of a hotel, and it was Sunday night, and I turned on the television, and there you were playing Lyndon. And when I got to Paramount for the call to go see about Star Trek, I didn't know it. I didn't know anything about Star Trek.
Okay.
And I was not really a fan of sci-fi.
Okay.
Although I have a son who is, and but anyway, I was stuck with that attitude, and I walked in and Harv Bennett, the producer and basically the writer, he started to tell me the story, and Bill interrupted him and said, "Yeah, I want him." and Harv said, "Yes, that's right. I want you." You know, it's Hollywood talk.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it was the first time I had really gotten a movie without asking for it or wanting it. And I had a great time. And a lot of people criticized Bill, a lot of the Star Trek people.
Yes.
The fans. And those who loved him, and those who disliked him went on disliking him and used Star Trek V as a cudgel to beat him with.
Agreed.
Too bad,
yes.
because that was the same year that Paramount was doing Batman, and guess who got all the post-production time on, guess which film?
Yeah, obviously Batman.
All the investment and the studios and the and the time and the CGI. So at that time, Bill got stuck and was treated like not important.
Understood. And also, am I right? Wasn't there like a writer's strike or whatever during the production?
Yes, there was. That's why Harv took over and wrote the script. But the writer was there at that first meeting, and a very nice guy named David something. And it's Hollywood. You write a script, and 6 other writers are hired.
Sure.
To fix what they loved about your script.
I just really,
this is great. We love it. We're going to do it, and here's his committee for you to work with to fix it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I defend the movie because I think, especially your performance, because it's nobody. And I'll tell you, I'm a longtime Star Trek fan as well. But the more I rewatch it, the more I enjoy it, and you are a great counterweight to Nimoy's Vulcan, and especially as someone, your character, who kind of stepped away from the culture and found a true purpose beyond the logic, and really was, as you said about your one-man shows, here was another humanist that really was, that was his mission.
Thank you. Absolutely right.
So I know it's great, and it's fun watching them play against this true believer who will not be dissuaded from his mission to bring the true word to everyone he encounters.
He wanted to take people's pain away.
Yes.
And Leonard wanted to play it as a double role. And
interesting.
That's the legend. I don't know if it's true. Bill, after I was hired, said, "Let's have lunch. Come on, I'll take you to lunch, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the part, talk about the movie." And so I said, "Okay, where do I meet you?" He said, "Meet me at the Orange Julius at the corner of Ventura." And it was a Jamba Juice place.
Sure.
We stood up at one of those little tables and drank our juice. He said, "Well, what do you think about the part?" And I said, "If you want to know, I'll tell you. I'm interested in playing him as Lenin." And he said, "John Lennon?" I said, No, the Lenin. Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. And he said, "Oh, well, God, we can't have commies." I said, I know that, Bill. What I'm saying is this. Lenin was an idealist. He believed that you could give justice to all. But then when he became he made his power moves, he forgot all of that and became a renegade, a rogue, and a dangerous man. And I said, I think that's what happens to Sybok. I think his urge to bring people to God, which is a very good urge, becomes bad or wrong when he starts stealing an enterprise and forcing people, kidnapping people, and all of this in order to make them into good people, and so Bill liked that. He said, just don't mention it, don't say a word about it to anybody. But that's what I thought about, and I think he was looking for someone more like Lyndon Johnson, sort of an angry man, a caged bear. But a good one. If you don't just leave him alone, he'd be really good. But that's all the direction I got from Bill, and I worked really hard at that. I had to go learn to ride a horse, because all actors think they can ride a horse, but they're all liars,
Yeah.
Especially New York actors who never saw a horse except in the park.
Sure.
But I wasn't very successful at the horse riding. My horse didn't like me. Her name was Dolly. She was a nice mare until they put the blue paint on her, and then she was like, fuck this. What's going on here? I don't feel good with this on here. Moo. Or whinny or whatever horses do.
Sure.
And when I got up on her, she said, you don't know how to ride me. And I said, no, I don't, but can you make me look good? And she said, absolutely not. I'm going to make you look like shit. So that great steal from Lawrence of Arabia, the ride in out of the heat waves,
Yes.
of Sybok, is a great entrance.
Sure.
And basically, what you see me do is get off the horse.
And then you're the counterweight to some great. I felt you were in your role. You were the counterweight to a couple really big character moments for DeForest Kelley and Shatner and Nimoy. That great scene when you're trying to show McCoy his pain and Spock the pain of his birth. And yeah, I mean, that's, again, you're the catalyst to their emotional moments. And that's, you've got to kind of underplay and just kind of deliver these moments to them. And those are, again, that's why, sir, I understand why the movie gets its lumps from Star Trek fans. But as I say, I continue to watch it, and there are great moments in that film. And maybe the totality may not succeed the way some other Star Trek stories have, but there are still great moments in that movie. And truly, again, you're the counterweight to them having wonderful character moments.
I like the way you say that counterweight thing, because it's true. There has to be someone, the protagonist and the antagonist, and I was the antagonist, and the rest of them were protagonists. But when the antagonist has something to offer to the protagonist, and it's not a ruse, it's not a I wasn't offering something evil. I was offering relief of your pain, of your psychic pain. And so those scenes were very good because they were quite close to how we are today. You know, we understand a lot more about psychology and all the rest of that, but nevertheless, people are still carrying around a lot of pain that they don't understand.
Sure.
And DeForest was a dreamboat. He was very sick. He was not going to live, and he was so skinny, you know. And he knew it. I knew it. We talked. He also was a Southern boy, and he talked to me a lot about how he gotten started in Hollywood and westerns and all of this. He was quite a good actor.
Indeed. Yes, sir.
And, so we got to be really good friends, and so when that scene happened, that was a very powerful moment. That the way he played that, and I loved that scene. And you know, there was other stuff like there was a scene in the movie that I did not want to do because it involved my taking one of those rock guns away from somebody, maybe Nimoy.
Yes.
I forgot. And fighting with him, and I said, Bill, I don't want to use a gun. And he said, well, it's in the script. And I said, I know that, but, you know, what the scripts are actual toilet paper, aren't they? But I said, here's the reason. The reason is you're creating a character here. You've done it very well, who is the foil, the convincing man with a convincing idea, who is kind of flummoxing these military types who are running a starship, and they can't. If he wasn't Spock's brother, they would have shot him down because he's too dangerous.
Right.
But anyway, there were those moments, and when it came to that last scene with Leonard, where I basically sacrificed myself for the group.
Yes.
I loved that moment with Leonard, and so did he, and he knew it was a good moment. And
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a wonderful time doing it.
That's, again, the best, as I'm sure you know, and in your experience in conflict in plays and film and television, the best villains are the ones that they're the heroes of their own story. And
that's right.
if you looked at their point of view, like you said, my friend Rob Burnett, who's a big Star Trek fan, always said that the best villains in Star Trek really weren't villains; they were adversaries, and they just had a different point of view. And
yes.
All the classic villains, it's like if you saw their point of view, they are the heroes of their story, and it's they believe they're right, their convictions. And again, and as you said, that's what makes Star Trek V an interesting story. Is that, as you say, these are military men that are now facing, in that great classic Star Trek way, a different way of life that they have to contend with and find a peaceful solution. And I agree with you that scene where you've got the gun, or rather Nimoy has the gun, and he's like, "Listen, you got to stand down." And he's like, "No, you always, you at Sybok say, no, you have to shoot me."
Yeah.
And then and Nimoy dips his gun, and then you're like, for a minute, I thought you were going to actually do it. And that's right. No, there's for creating a character like that again, after 30 years of, Spock being considered a loner, and then you find out he has a brother, that's a lot for Star Trek fans to maybe swallow in one movie.
That's right. That's exactly right. It was tough for them.
It was a thankless job for you. And again, I think you really came through. And in fact, I even remember Gene Siskel saying quite favorably of your role, and that you came in with a tough job. And I at least I remember that he said kind things about you in his review.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes those things just click. And, so, you know, I've done, I don't know, quite a few movies. I did a movie. What was my last movie? Was for Kathy Bates directed it, and it was in Canada, where New York. You know, did you know New York and Chicago are in Canada? They're both in Toronto.
Yeah, I know a lot of times Canada. You know, yeah, definitely will take the role of Chicago or New York. Absolutely. Yes. So,
but anyway, I was up there doing that.
Was that Messenger of Death? Or?
I was playing what's his name? Rauh, R-A-U-H, who was, I think, from Chicago. He was a lawyer who saved Lillian Hellman's bacon at the HUAC hearings because he had asked her to write something about it. I guess I've forgotten now, but
Dash and Lily.
He was going to introduce it into evidence, and he did it very, very slickly. He actually, because one guy on the HUAC council said, "Well, I want to hear more about blah blah," and that was my cue. And I said, "It's right here, sir." And I placed it on his desk, and I placed it on everybody's desk, and it was now in the record. And so it saved her ass, but he was a very smart lawyer, and again it was like one or two scenes, and Kathy Bates was a great pal to hang out with too for a while. And
I want to see that movie. That's Dash and Lily, about Dashiell Hammett and Lillian Hellman. Yeah.
Yeah, Dashiell Hammett. Yeah. Did you know how Roddenberry sold the thing to Desilu?
No, but I do know, and obviously I meant to mention obviously your mother-in-law greenlit Star Trek. So please, if you got that story.
By then she was making the decisions because Desi had departed finally from the company and she bought him out. But Desi had been one of the original yes-sayer to the concept of the pilot. And then they did the pilot and CBS didn't like it. And I don't know. So then, but they came back with a different pilot. And it wasn't all that different, but Roddenberry rewrote it. I believe the story is right. And he came in and they said, "What's the pitch?" And he said, 4 words. He said, "Wagon trains in space."
Which is smart, because, the Westerns were so big back then, absolutely.
That's right. It was the end of the Western era. And so everybody got exactly what he was saying. The good guys trying to make a trip somewhere being attacked.
Yeah.
And,
and then taming.
But Roddenberry Roddenberry had a much more interesting mind than that. Roddenberry believed in trying to understand what really might be out there that was different from us as humans, and what kind of differences they were. And again, a humanistic approach to things. What are aliens? And so once I got onto that, I started to like a lot more of the Star Trek, the original series, and the films are okay, but I don't know. There are several defining moments in a person's life, I think, in terms of career, and that was one of mine. And so was Boys in the Band, and so was Lyndon, and all the rest of them, because I've spent the rest of my time here trying to understand American history and where we're at and where we're going, And so yesterday I was like my grandchild. I was jumping up and down like a little baby and giggling and screaming, and my wife was throwing towels around. We're having a good time, knowing all the while today the shit hits the fan. So
yeah, yeah, it's going to be uphill for President Biden. But I do, again, we all are rooting for normalcy and hope, and I do believe if he's allowed to do some of the things that he wants to do, it's going to make a big difference in a lot of people's lives. I completely agree with you.
Absolutely.
And I share your enthusiasm.
Right, and knowing the small window that the president has to work in order to get stuff done before the dissenters descend is probably this next 100 days, and then the rest of the time you sort of spend doing ceremonial stuff. It's not quite like that, but that's what happened to Obama. They busted his chops, and he was incredibly brilliant to get the ACA through.
Yes.
And then they just spent the rest of the time roadblocking. And,
yes, sir.
That's just the truth. That's what happens and what happened. So democracy is under a desperate siege because of the melting pot has come unglued,
Yes, sir.
It's tribal stuff now. Being Greek and living in Chicago, you have a lot of compatriots there. And
oh, yeah.
I have no doubt that I've eaten in 15 Greek restaurants in Chicago. And, I love Chicago. I just can't, I couldn't ever tear myself away from New York. I never figured out Hollywood, although I did well there. And but now having this graphic novel thing, I'm curious to see if I could, as my son Ben, I think I wrote to you, has written a long form graphic novel. He's the first kid who came to me and showed me a book called The Crow. You remember that one?
Oh, of course, absolutely, James Barr. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like this was like my first awareness of something called graphic novel, which was different from a comic book, but not really.
No.
The difference was the subjects tended to be darker and more in keeping with what was really going on in society. But I never liked Superman, I have to tell you.
Really?
He was way too corporate for me.
Interesting. That's interesting because originally
did he ever crack a joke?
Well, that's fair. But those handful of early late 30s stories that Jerry Siegel wrote were very much he was a social justice warrior. I mean, he really took on crooked politicians.
Clark was? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think by the time of the 40s progressed and into the 50s, I understand what you're saying, and he really was a bit more a simpler depiction. But if you go back to those early stories from 1938, 39, there was. I mean, God, there's one story where he goes into a slum and using his powers cleans the whole slum up and makes it a much more living housing condition for people. And like I said,
that's right. I think you're right. You're absolutely right. I got to comics in the 40s.
Sure.
I was born in 34, so by 44 was, I think, one of my, when I was 10,
sure.
Comics were it for me. And, there was no television.
Well, yeah.
and it was, in the South, there was no theater. There were guys playing banjos on their back porches. And that was good. The music was good, but the advent of comic stories. And when I got my first book, I was 7 years old, and it was given to me by my aunt who didn't like me. I think she wanted to just shut the kid up with the big glasses who can't see, and who's a nerd and a weird guy, and he's not like my son, And but she gave me a present for First Communion, which was The Adventures of Robin Hood, and that started me off on superheroes.
Sure.
And and the artwork in that by a guy named Howard Pyle. I don't know if you've seen that original artwork for the Robin Hood book. Oh, wait a minute, it was written by Howard Pyle, and then somebody else did the artwork, but it was fabulous.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I started trying to draw, and how do you draw a guy with a muscle? How do you draw somebody in action, and all that stuff? And so I became a pretty good caricaturist, and I stayed like that for a while. And then my second son, Ben, turned up in high school to be a political cartoonist.
Oh, wow.
And he was very smart and very adept and a really good artist. And he still is. And but he doesn't want to do the art for this thing he's written, because it's above his pay grade now.
I understand.
He's written something very very complex and interesting, and about two children orphaned when a boat in the East River blows up. It was an actual event.
Oh.
The boiler burst, and all these people were killed, and they were all immigrants having an outing on a Sunday, and these two children are thrown into the water, and their parents, who were trying to save people, disappear in the East River. And so it's 1906, New York. And if you remember the 5 Points gangs in the Scorsese film,
yes, sir,
that was the stuff that was going on. And so two kids from a German immigrant, upward-looking family, upwardly mobile and educated people, are thrown into the maelstrom of gangs in New York, and have to cope. And so I'm excited to see if this boy can get this thing off the ground. So.
Oh wow! If it gets published, then he's welcome to come on my show and then talk about it.
Oh, that'd be great.
It'd be my pleasure.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
That's terrific.
Would you, if depending on how Teddy does, would you want to adapt the Linden play or the Hemmingway play, or your
yes,
other
I would. If Dead Reckoning was interested, or anybody else for that matter, my scripts are good, and they're wordy because these people were wordy.
Sure.
But I thought Eryck did a pretty good job of arranging the dialogue, the monologue, on the page so that you followed it extremely well. And the answer to a writer's prayer is that somebody matches up a face with what you know the person looks like,
Oh yeah.
And I think he did a pretty good job of that.
The art is fantastic, and I do think it matches the narrative quite well. And whatever cuts, not having seen your one-man show, I think you did quite well, and in terms of paring it down, because that's sometimes the concern with graphic novels is if they are too wordy. But no, I think this is a great presentation, and it's amazing. People know Teddy Roosevelt from Mount Rushmore, and they might know some of the history, but there really is a tragedy in that heroic story and all of his accomplishments. Also, I think, given that it happened over 100 years ago, it's quite timely because he faced a lot of the same challenges that I think President Biden is about to face in his administration.
John, I love the way you talk. You're really I'm glad to meet you because obviously you know what the fuck you're talking about, and
that's a great compliment, sir. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of history.
You're a lettered person, as they say, or used to say. So this is an interesting conversation. I mean, Clarence, I don't know if you know much about Clarence Darrow. He was a Chicago guy.
Yes, sir.
And you know the
Leopold and Loeb,
right?
Yes, sir.
And all of that. And I got the rights to his life, because I was asked to do something by Harry Middleton at the LBJ Library, because every couple of years he'd call me and say, Lady Bird wants to see you do something else. Lady Bird was a great mentor to me.
Wow.
Because she was actually a queen. She was a fabulous human being. And she showed up at every one of my shows. As I said to you, with 1,100 of her best friends, and and sat in the third row. She never wanted to be singled out or anything like that. And I always did single her out. You know, I would find a way to talk right to her. And after every show, we would go upstairs in the library to a reception room where they had a kitchen, and they would provide a fabulous dinner for me and the special guests that they had invited and wanted comment on the play. They actually wanted to talk about the events and purpose and meaning of the play. And so I had to answer questions for Lyndon, Darrow, Teddy, and Hemmingway.
Wow.
With people who were experts, people who knew all of this stuff, and also with high-level people from the government and so on. So I had that extra kick of being able to spend actual real time sitting next to Lady Bird and answering questions. And they would say, well, what would Darrow think about this situation? And
wow.
I'm just turning my chair around. I'm looking here right now at a you know how you press flowers? Have you ever done it?
Oh, sure. No, I'm aware. Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. Her niece came to me after I did Darrow, and dropped a bunch of Texas wildflowers in my lap, and I had to get on a plane, go back to New York, because I was working at the Lincoln Center, and she said, these are from Lady Bird. She wants you to have them.
Oh,
and
wow.
She knows you're leaving, and blah, 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 but here's what you do. You get those back to New York, and you put them in a press. And I did that, and I got an artist, a framer, to put them in a frame for me, and I'm looking at them now.
Oh, that's amazing.
Texas blue bonnets and all that stuff. They're now all brown and tan, most of them.
Sure.
But,
well, sure.
There's a little bit of color there, but that was one of the that was the kind of thing that went on with when you get serious about what American history is, and realize how fortunate we have been as humans to have had this government, and how loathsomely we have treated it. And what Biden said yesterday in the speech was stunning. It was a great speech, and I used to do Lyndon's speeches, who were written by Doris Kearns Goodwin's, by Richard Goodwin, by him. Yeah, and but I had copies of Lyndon's speeches, and he had stricken out lines and reoriented them, and the margins were full of his writing. And so he told Goodwin what he wanted to say. Goodwin wrote it brilliantly, and then Lyndon fixed it. And Darrow, on the other hand, just learned his story, what he was going to say to the jury, and pretended like he had notes in his pocket, so that he could shake up the other lawyer, the prosecution, and he would stop and reach into his pocket and change his mind. Well, I won't say that just now. I'll hold that in reserve. So he was a very canny man, but his belief in the human race was flawed, as all of us are, but he kept trying to find the dimension of humanity that you could trust. And Teddy flung it out there. He never stopped. He was a dynamo like you would not believe. He read 3 books a day.
Wow.
He wrote 41 books in between. He never stopped. And everything he did was, I'll just tell you one thing. The French ambassador came to Washington, and Teddy always took everybody to Rock Creek Park for a hike. Every visitor. Let's go. And so they go down to the Potomac, and everybody strips naked, and the French ambassador is standing there, and he says, "Must I do this?" And he said, "Yes, you must." And so he takes off everything except his white gloves, and they swim across, and then they hike naked into the Rock Creek Park, which was a wild. If you've been to D.C., it's a great park. It's a wild park, and it was the kind of hike that is okay. I'll hold on to your butt while you grab that rock, and then
Wow!
It was vigorous. It was dangerous, and so everybody got that treatment from Teddy, and of course, some loved it and some hated it. but this is the kind of man he was, and
he's a human dynamo, absolutely.
And that's the kind of man that his nephew, or his cousin rather, Franklin was.
Yes.
Before Franklin was hit with polio. Franklin actually dived off the dock at Oyster Bay to save Eleanor, who Teddy had forced into the water to swim, and then realized she didn't know how to swim. And before Teddy could get into the water, Franklin ran past him off the dock, dived in, saved Eleanor, his cousin, his fifth cousin or something.
Yep.
And that's how their romance started.
That's a great scene in your book, absolutely. And I'm glad that.
And you remember from the Ken Burns thing.
Yes, and really, I loved, because again, you know that they're cousins from the history books, but I really did love in the Burns documentary the various times that they would would circle each other and be part of their lives. And yeah, it's just really, again, the difference between the Hyde Park Roosevelts and the Oyster Bay Roosevelts as their lives progressed. And it's a shame. It's really a shame that there really became kind of, there was jealousy from the Oyster Bay Roosevelts as the Hyde Park Roosevelts became more prominent.
A jealousy?
Well, it seemed like it from Burns' documentary, yeah. That resentment that Franklin's political career did so well and Ted Jr.'s didn't, and certainly was second place to what Franklin was able to accomplish.
Well, yeah, but, Teddy was long gone then.
But I mean Ted Jr. Yeah, I mean Ted Jr. His son.
Say that again. What?
Sure. Teddy's sons, like Theodore Jr.
Yes. There was that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that kind of manufactured, I think, by generational thing.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that the probability was that the families were not really close. They were different branches of the Roosevelts, and so I don't know. I can't get into that. I don't know about that. But,
no, I understand. And again, documentarians, as much as we want them to be as truthful as possible, they have their point of view and may not be completely accurate. I don't know.
But Teddy also made a promise that he kept, which is that he wouldn't run again. And he wished like hell he had never said that, because he kept his promises. But had he run, and he was eligible to run again because his first term was a gift of an assassin.
Yes.
He could have run for a second term. He would have won very handily. But by the time he got back to it, it was too late, and the moment had passed. And also, Taft worked against him. He gave the presidency to Taft, and Taft really
screwed him.
Yeah. Taft did not continue his progressive policies. Taft was enthralled to. He was a soft man, and he was enthralled to the big money people, and so they kind of led him around or pushed him around a little bit. Although he was a very smart man and a very decent president, he let Teddy's legacy go to hell. And then you did not like Taft. I say that.
And I appreciated in your play and in your graphic novel that sad scene when Roosevelt went to Woodrow Wilson about trying to re-enlist and find a role for himself for World War II, and that's just such a sad moment as well. That he's clearly.
That is a sad, embarrassing moment when Teddy begged.
Yeah.
He begged to get back over there with his boys, and Wilson said really mean things about him afterwards. He said he's a boy. He's a Boy Scout. He doesn't. What else did he say? He said the best way to treat Mr. Roosevelt is to ignore him. That will hurt the most.
Yeah.
So I've never. I know the guy who wrote the definitive biography of Wilson. He's Dick Berg's son, and Dick was one of my mentors in Hollywood, and he has two sons, and one is a writer, and the other one was Jeff Berg, who ran CNN, CAA, and was my agent for a while. But
sure.
When the author of Woodrow Wilson book, came here to Palm Springs. He was at the Writers Festival, and so we got to know each other. And I had remembered him as a child when I visited Dick at their house.
Sure.
And so we had that connection. But I disliked Woodrow Wilson. I don't know why. It was like visceral. He was such a prig. But I looked at Joe Biden's face yesterday, giving that speech, and seeing a plea. It was a prayer to America. Help us. Let us help you,
Yeah.
And if we don't respond, we will lose this fragile thing that we have. And that's the stuff that I think about now a lot. If I had more years in my life, I would write, my next project would be called Manifest Destiny, which I think are two of the most toxic words in the English language, because they gave rise to killing the Indians, and it's okay, because we own this land now, and Teddy, to his discredit, had some, not racism. He had something else. I don't know what you'd call it. His theory was that black people, and for all I know, and definitely Italians, and Jews, not Jews so much, because he liked the intelligence and the upward lift, but he didn't like Italians much, and he didn't like blacks. He thought that they were not ready for civilization. Well, now we know why, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, you know about the 1619 project?
Probably, if you described it a bit more, yes, I know the phrase.
1619 in Jamestown Harbor, or whatever that colony was.
Yes.
There was a slave ship in the harbor, anchored from Africa, and the planters in Virginia were beginning to think that the only crop that they could grow that would earn money was tobacco, and so they needed help, because the Indians were not going to help them.
Sure.
The Indians were a part of the Algonquian Conference, and of which the Cherokee were some. They had their own alphabet. They had their own Bible. They were really quite amazing humans. And Powhatan, whose daughter was Pocahontas, was in the bushes there, and Powhatan was threatening he wanted to keep the planters right at the coast, right? And the planters naturally wanted to get the ground that was more fertile in the interior. And so there was a slave ship, and there was a ship full of bartered women who were paid to get on the ship and sail to America to become the wife or concubine or mistress or whatever of a planter. And so these women were no better than prostitutes, and no worse than prostitutes. And they were on this ship expecting to get onto the land. And the Burgesses, the House of Burgesses, this is all in Williamsburg. The House of Burgesses was arguing against or for pro and con, whether we let these slaves land. And there were people that said no, but the yeas won, and the slaves came ashore, and thus began American slavery.
Wow.
And thus began the American contempt for women because they're just vessels.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to have progeny, and so this kind of stuff. If I was talking to my sister now about this, we would be going hammer and tongs, because my sister Lynn Wachowski was a rabid Houston socialist and all this stuff, and that's where the boys got all their Matrix stuff, you know.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and their father was a Polish guy. I tried a few Polish jokes on him. He didn't like it very much, but he was a wonderful man, and also the two of them were extremely close. They were great partners in life, and so I'm still connected to their 4 children, all girls now, all ladies.
Yeah, that's amazing, and yeah, they're incredibly talented people, the Wachowskis.
Yes, they are.
You know, Small World. You're writing about Teddy Roosevelt. My sister married into the William McKinley family.
Oh,
and our direct descendants of the president. So that's
right.
It's pretty crazy. My 2 nephews are McKinleys.
Really?
Yeah,
so got the same name.
Oh, yeah.
Are they from Ohio? Wasn't he from Ohio?
He was from Ohio, yes, indeed. Absolutely. And they've got a few mementos. They're nephews, down the line, grandnephews of the great-grandnephews. But,
right.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And, yeah, they were both, they're William Riley and William James. So they were named after.
So they're maintaining the history.
Oh yeah,
interesting. Yeah. I had conversations with Theodore the Fourth, and what's the other one? Teddy the Fourth, and Theodore Roosevelt. He's not called Teddy. They're cousins, and they live up in Boston.
Oh wow!
And I got in touch with them to see if they would want to have a look at this, and they did have a look, and I haven't heard back from them, so I don't know if they liked it or not. But they were very nice fellows to talk to. One of them actually saw the show in New York, and then Nancy Jackson came. Nancy Jackson was Archie Roosevelt's daughter. And she came back to talk to me, and I came from the dressing room, and she was crying, and I said, what's wrong? She said, I am weeping because you treated my father so well, so tenderly.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's great.
Because Archie was the one they sort of kicked around, and but he was a decent guy, and he won the Croix de Guerre by leading a charge in out of the trenches in France.
Wow.
So they were all warriors, but they didn't want to be. None of them cared as much about it as Quentin did, and Kermit was his own story. And Kermit basically saved his father's life. Did you know that?
Yes, in that expedition they did
in the Amazon.
And he almost died. Yeah, no, that's an incredible story. My God.
Yes, there's a documentary about it. It's not very good, but it's there. And there's that was part of. I think Ken Burns said something about that too.
Oh yeah, no, it's a big part of the of Teddy's story in Burns's documentary about the whole family. Absolutely. I wondered if what your opinion was of Edwin Morris, I forget which, but the historian that wrote the Teddy biography from 20 years ago or so.
Who? Edmund Morris, you mean?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that historian.
Yeah, no, I never read I did not read any of those. I only used Teddy's autobiographical books and newspaper accounts and things like that. I didn't want to get involved with trying to get rights from somebody.
Sure.
Yeah. And I also didn't want Edmund Morris's approach to it anywhere near my work.
I understand. I know he's a controversial historian. Certainly his Reagan history is certainly an odd piece of work. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. And I basically I try to go to as close to the sources I can get.
Understood.
For instance, Hemmingway. Naturally, Patrick, who's the one that was alive still when I wrote it, and his wife Carol, they live in Idaho, and he didn't want anything to do with my trying to make a Hemingway play. But again, that was LBJ Library wanted it, and so I put something together based on the movable feast, and I took it down and showed it to Harry, to the library, and I got a knock on the door, and because I'd gotten a letter from the Hemingway people saying, do not write anything about Ernest Hemingway. And I called my own lawyer and said what to do about this. He said, because I've got this little show I have to do. He said, I'll tell you what, do the show and then open the letter.
Sure.
So I followed the rules, and but there was a knock on the door at the dressing room after I did this little thing from the fiction, and I thought, oh, I'm in shit now. And there was this guy in a suit and tie standing there. He said, my name is somebody Kennedy, and Gene Kennedy, I believe, and I represent the Hemingway Foundation. And I said, am I in trouble? He said, no. And he said, did you have trouble with Patrick?
Wow.
I said, yes. He said, so do we, because we represent the letters, Hemingway's letters, which were given to the foundation as a foundation by Mary Hemingway after Ernest died. And I think Mary wanted to correct the record a little bit,
Sure.
Because otherwise, if the family had gotten the letters, they would have edited them and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I did my Hemingway play is completely from the letters.
Wow.
And his letters reveal a really different kind of guy than all the press and all that stuff. And it's a very much more interesting story. Once again, I had to find a reason for the play. Like for me, the reason for Teddy, the play about Teddy, is that he's faced with the death of a son, which he thinks is his fault.
Right.
And he doesn't know what to do about that. He was 60 or 61 when this happened. That's too young to lose a son.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no good time to lose a son, or a daughter or whatever.
Sure.
But this was a shock to Teddy, and that makes a play. I mean, to build around that.
Agreed.
And so I built around Hemingway to the fact that when JFK was elected, there was a big to-do naturally, and they wanted to do a commemorative volume contributed to by great American writers and artists and so on. And they got in touch with Hemingway, or maybe Max Perkins, whoever was still representing him, and he was about 60. And they said, yes, will you do this? And they had to talk him into it. And then they said, and he said yes, and they said, what we need, Ernie, is one sentence. It still makes me laugh. And he was highly pissed off. One sentence from me, the Nobel Prize winner.
Yeah.
And then he couldn't write it. And when I found that out from his letters, I realized I had a play. And what was the reason? And the reason was early dementia. And he had lost it already, but didn't know it.
Wow.
So that's what my play is about.
Wow.
So
That's amazing.
if you go on my site, you'll see, and I've basically, you can see them all.
That's great. I was wondering.
Some of the film is not too great, but I never paid much attention to that. There is a record, and the thing was filmed in the theater. So was Lyndon. So was Teddy. So was Darrow.
Great.
And all of them were filmed in theaters.
And is that LawrenceLuckinbill.com? Is it that basic?
That's right. That's me.
Terrific. Well, I'll certainly guide listeners to your website, and then hopefully they will watch, because
good. That's good. That's a good idea. That's a good
absolutely.
idea. Yeah, the Teddy film's okay. It's not great, but it's watchable, and it's the very first version. But as we were saying, and you mentioned the conciseness of getting the dialogue down so that the artist can deal with it. The conciseness came from the rewrites over all the years, which, as I said to you, slimmed it down, made it go like the California Zephyr instead of like a locomotive, you know.
Well, like I said, no, the narrative absolutely, the combination of the art and the narrative, I think, make a very great graphic novel, and I'm really happy to help you promote it. And really, congratulations, sir, on a really diverse career, and it sounds like you've really enjoyed the various directions you've been able to go into with it. God, we didn't even talk about, your fantastic marriage to Lucy, and I know you two. Reading about you, pretty cool that you were able to tour with her on They're Playing Our Song. Her great musical.
And I do, and some other stuff. Educating Rita, we did a bunch of things.
Oh,
together.
that's great.
The Guardsman by Molnar. We acted together quite a lot, and we did a wonderful movie, which you can find probably on YouTube. It's called The Mating Season.
Is that the old play? Based on the play? Based on the old play, The Mating Season? Am I right? No?
It's a CBS film. It was done by the gal that did Dirty Dancing, and it's Linda, what's her name? Anyway, it was very, very well done, and it's a good script, and it's funny, and and then we did a pilot together, which was my idea, and that didn't go, but that movie's good, and it's fun, and it looks probably antique right now, like anything made in the 70s. It's like, where's your bell bottoms, and all the hair down around your ears, but you work in a certain era, and
sure,
right now absolutely. I'm in Palm Springs. I do readings of these things, and right now I've got to finish this monster book that I've written about my life and my experiences and my all of my really adventures. I have a good life and a good time, and I have 5 fabulous children and the greatest wife that anybody ever had. So, what the fuck?
That's awesome, man. Well, when your autobiography is ready, you're welcome to come back. I'd love to talk to you about it. Because
I'll keep that in my head.
Please do.
Once I clean up the pornography.
That's great. Yeah, honestly, sir, this has been a great conversation.
I'll get it to you.
That would be wonderful. I really appreciate your time. I didn't want to overtax you, but it sounds like we were well engaged in this discussion, and I'm happy to help promote the graphic novel. And really, great to talk about Star Trek and everything else. It's really been a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you very much, John, and same here. We were in sync, and you're a delight to talk to, and I really enjoyed it. So, if we do it again,
an actor,
that'd be great fun.
Well, no, given your background, I appreciate the praise. Thank you very much for enjoying what I do. No,
yes,
it means a lot.
I appreciate it, and I'll send me stuff if you want. I'll look at it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, sir. Very much, truly. And good luck with the graphic novel. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
That's Lawrence Luckinbill. Do yourself a favor. It's an incredible book by Lawrence Luckinbill and Eryck Tate, the graphic novel Teddy, adapting Luckinbill's one-man show. Really interesting stuff. Things about Teddy Roosevelt you probably never heard about, and a really great conversation that I had with Mr. Luckinbill. I thank him for his time, and really I can't recommend this new graphic novel more, from Dead Reckoning, Teddy. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation on Word Balloon. I'm also releasing a fun conversation I had with Shelley and Philip Bond. I talked to them on Valentine's Day about their relationship, their off-register imprint that currently has 2 Kickstarters going on, one about college radio called Heavy Rotation that Shelley is working on, and then Philip has been producing these incredible 12-inch squared prints of a series of images that he's drawn called Ink. It's volume 2, and they're the size of old vinyl album covers. And it's a great format to do art, and I love what he's been doing. And both of them have Kickstarters going on that deserve your attention. So it's a really fun conversation. We throw in an 80s music trivia contest at Shelley's insistence, and somebody gets a bloody nose in the process. I can't give you more details than that. You'll have to listen to Philip Bond and Shelley Bond talking to me on Word Balloon. Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners and their patronage through Patreon. Patreon.com/wordballoon. I hope you consider subscribing to Word Balloon via Patreon. I'm doing my best to present some incredible conversations with creators of pop culture, whether it's from comics or television or film. I do my best to give you the best coverage and in-depth interviews here at Word Balloon every month. Thank you for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners, via patreon.com/wordballoon. Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners and their patronage through Patreon. Patreon.com/wordballoon. I hope you consider subscribing to Word Balloon via Patreon. I'm doing my best to present some incredible conversations with creators of pop culture, whether it's from comics or television or film. I do my best to give you the best coverage and in-depth interviews here at Word Balloon every month. Thank you for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners, via patreon.com/wordballoon. Word Balloon is brought to you by Aftershock Comics, a proud sponsor of Word Balloon for a few years now. Love talking to the creators from Aftershock Comics because they are bending genres with exciting stories, great art, and fantastic writing. Definitely books that you won't want to miss. Things like Artemis and the Assassin from my buddy Stephanie Phillips and Megan Hetrick. Fantastic time travel story, great adventure, unbelievable stuff with a slant on history. You can also get Cullen Bunn's horror anthology, All My Little Demons, a fantastic omnibus that features the Brothers Dracul, Dark Ark, After the Flood, Knights Temporal, Unholy Grave, the Witchhammer original graphic novel, and 2 stories from the Shock anthologies. Great stuff from Cullen Bunn. And coming at the end of February, it's Disaster Incorporated, the complete series from Joe Harris and Sebastian Perez. Really great stuff from Aftershock, all worthy of your attention. Do me a favor, go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages of art, and the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks a lot for listening. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions. Copyright 2021. Happy President's Day. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.